So let's kick off with today's agenda. We'll start with an introduction to SimplyVideo and Realwear, moving on to discuss the challenges facing the industry currently. We'll discuss offshore energy lifecycle solutions from discovery to decommission or recycling. And we'll wrap up today's session with a demonstration of the Realwear HNT1 in a SimplyVideo call, finishing with a question and answer session with both George and Tommy. I'm really pleased to introduce to you all today's speakers. So, based in Newcastle under Lyme in the UK, George Sims is SimplyVideo's Chief Strategy Officer. He's an experienced technology leader with a key focus on digital transformation. George champions innovative, sustainable solutions which blend extended reality and traditional video conferencing, and he's a keen football player. Based out of Rhode Island in the USA, we have Tommy Loughborough. He's joining us today. He oversees strategic market development for Realwear, a provider focused on knowledge transfer acceleration. An esteemed sailor, Tommy is currently developing maritime use cases for the hardware in low bandwidth environments. And finally, nice to meet you all. My name is Ben Wright. I am a business development manager here at SimplyVideo HQ in Leeds in the UK. Following several successful years in sales development and management positions across several SaaS businesses in the UK and abroad, I joined SimplyVideo to transfer my breadth of experience into the startup world. Outside of work, I'm a touring musician, restrictions permitting. I'm a keen environmentalist and a lover of all things tech. Without further ado, I'd like to hand over to George Sims, SimplyVideo's Chief Strategy Officer. George, thanks for joining us.
Cool, thanks for that, Ben, and I'm glad to see we all know how to use video technology and unmute our microphones. I mean, that's always the start we want. But yeah, great to be here and lovely to be able to talk about what we're doing. First of all, just want to give that little bit of background around what is SimplyVideo. We basically are the world's first video platform built with smart devices in mind. Really, the vision of the business when me and my founders set SimplyVideo up was to take video calling beyond just a bunch of heads and shoulders on screen, right? We've all spent the last year of our lives living in these little boxes on a display in front of us, and it's been great to keep in touch with loved ones and keep businesses running. But I think the longer term vision for me has always been to use video for so much more than just that. And it's lovely to have a conversation, but it's also the use cases and the perspectives that we can start to bring into live video communication is really, really interesting, and obviously very, very close to my heart and the business that I now run. Really, we're about trying to use what is already out there with new world devices. So we understand people want to use Microsoft Teams, Zoom, Google Meet, browser-based solutions, and really we want to work with those solutions to help bring in new views, things like drones, obviously the Realwear HNT1, underwater cameras. There's a number of other devices that SimplyVideo support, and really I suppose that's our unique position in the market. We really bring collaboration, live video collaboration, and change the view and the perspective on what you can do in that video call. Again, I think this slide just shows what we're about. Obviously, this is just mocked up, but this is what we're capable of doing in our video calls, right? We can bring in devices like tablets, computers, mobiles, obviously, browser solutions. But then it's about being able to bring in these industry-specific views. We'll talk about some of those later on, specifically around renewable energy and particularly offshore. But the ability to bring in not just real life objects, but also virtual and augmented reality. So BIM models, shapes, plans, digital twins, the ability to combine these ideas with reality is very, very important. And obviously we then provide a really amazing network and backbone to be able to handle that video traffic. And we'll talk a little bit more later on about low bandwidth calling and ultra low bandwidth calling, which is very important again to the kind of topics we're going to discuss today. why we're relevant to the renewable sector. I've just touched on it, but low bandwidth, right? It's not, you haven't got the same connectivity that you have out, in the city that you do out at sea. So how do we manage that? And that's what SimplyVideo are here for. We're here to help transfer that data from offshore locations at super low bandwidth or satellite locations back into core collaboration stacks. We want to talk to those auditorium spaces, meeting rooms, seminar rooms that already exist in big business today, because that idea of sharing knowledge and, the old adage is knowledge is power, right? And I definitely believe in that. And I think if we can connect back to these group participation views and share that perspective from the offshore environment, that's interesting. XR is an emerging market, and we want to be able to bring those views to your video calls. That's what we do. Easy scale, fully brandable, probably not so relevant to this conversation, but worth noting. And then companion camera features are really interesting because it means we can bring in perspectives of the same space at one time, and have those tripods set up so you can actually get a number of different perspectives on the same thing in real time, which when you're trying to triage problems or diagnose machinery faults is very, very interesting. And it's become it's been a prominent piece of our solution to date. So yeah, that's a very quick SimplyVideo overview. And at that point, I'll hand over to Mr. Loughborough, who's sitting. I don't know if you can give us a view of where you are, Tommy, just to make us all feel a little bit jealous, but yeah, Tommy's out in Miami at the minute, so for anyone in the UK, that's not the site we want to see.
Biscayne Bay, Miami. George, Ben, thank you very much for having me on behalf of Realwear. We've really enjoyed the relationship with SimplyVideo over the past few months, year, and as relatively new companies, we're 4 or 5 years old now, and it's very appreciated to be able to work with such culturally aligned teams. So, very much looking forward to this. At the core, Realwear is a knowledge transfer platform company. We start with our hardware, which is agnostic, and we pair that hardware with software like SimplyVideo, the right connectivity solutions, and then a variety of services in order to produce a connected solution, a connected worker solution for the problems that everyone's facing today with travel restrictions, with smaller margins, with a transition from oil and gas to renewable energy. We need to come up with solutions for these field workers, for the people that are actually at the site, needing the support of the engineers and the teams on shore. So the Realwear HMT1 head-mounted tablet headset, as you can see in this slide, is a device that you can clip into a helmet, you can clip into a ball cap, you can clip it into a variety of different wearable PPE equipment, depending on what you need. But the device itself has a camera. It has a heads-up display that allows you to access documents or navigate through the device itself. And then it has the processing power of a Qualcomm Snapdragon chip. So it is a tablet, just like an iPad or a phone or any other device that you choose, but you wear it on your head and it's 100% voice activated. When it comes to knowledge transfer, I think we really focus on that because companies like Vestas, for example, are identifying the fact that 30 to 40% of their workforce will retire in the next 10 years. Now, unfortunately, that 30 or 40% has a disproportionate amount of the intelligence, of the knowledge, the real IP of what makes that company move. And that senior workforce that's leaving needs to find a way to pass on that nuance of whether it's a piece of machinery or a process or a solution. They need to find out the way to get that through to the next generation. And oftentimes they're doing this, again, over a Teams call or over Cisco, and one-handed as they try to hold a phone at the piece of machinery. So we really want to focus on empowering the outbound generation to record and categorize the processes that they currently have, with tools like video micro training or even digital workflows created off of that in order to allow an incoming technician or employee who's in the training phase to benefit from these tools. And when they hit a sticking point where they can no longer proceed productively, they can then adopt a remote mentorship solution like SimplyVideo in order to converse with a remote expert. Now, if that remote mentorship solution is not paired with the connectivity at the place of work, everybody runs into some problems when the quality of the call breaks down. So this is why I really emphasize it's hardware, software, connectivity, and services. Services like training, for example. Digital workflows can incorporate pictures and videos and so on to enhance the just the step-by-step processes that are put in there. So that's just a starting point, but we can elaborate a lot on those 4 or 5 use cases if anyone has any specific questions. Unlike HoloLens and other wearable devices that are fully immersive with a full screen, our Realwear headset is built for industry, so we can maintain situational awareness. It's a 100% hands-free device. The battery life is 12 hours so that it lasts a full shift. Again, it can be assembled with any PPE equipment that your health, quality, and safety team might prescribe. So it's a rather versatile platform. Next slide, please, George. Thank you. Not only is it versatile, but it's rough. It's rugged. It's built to survive in these demanding environments. I myself have submerged the device multiple times in salt water at more than the prescribed depth, and have come out on the other side with a functioning tool without any issues whatsoever. So it's not only water resistant, it's quite water resistant, but it's drop proof from 2 meters, and it's heat resistant and quite a robust tool when we're talking about a computer, essentially. Beyond that, next slide, please, George. Thank you. Beyond the basics of the rugged device, we can, as I say, pair it with a variety of forms of helmets, face shields, hats, ball caps, and so on, depending on what the needs are of the person in the field. There are also other accessories like boroscopes and microscopes and a variety of other Bluetooth connected devices that we can pair with the heads-up display or with the headset and push those feeds as well through the SimplyVideo platform. So we have over 21,000 devices deployed globally over the last 4 years with distribution centers in every region. And we pride ourselves on being able to deliver our hardware and pair it with software anywhere in the world that you may need us. So please don't hesitate to reach out if there's a region or an area that you'd like to be connected with. George and I would be happy to make sure that the Realwear representatives from that part of the world are able to work with your team directly in that part of the world. We're all in constant communication.
So this might be a good time to interject, Tommy, just before we go any further, because I think I and maybe the audience joining today would be interested to know a little bit about why the renewable industry is of such interest to both yourself and George. Tommy, do you want to kick off?
Absolutely. I think as a sailor spending over 150 days on the water a year for the last 10 years, I'm in the environment that's most impacted by this sector. We can see the change, already as our world grows, as the population grows. It's drastically impacting our waterways and our oceans. And in many ways, this is the easiest pathway for me to make an impact here. So from a personal standpoint, that was my driver. And when I met George, I think we very quickly realized that we were kindred spirits in that regard. And so the entire process of building these solutions became rather organic because of our value system and our alignment. Wouldn't you say, George?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the environment's a very important part of, I think everybody's lives these days. I think everyone's got to look at that green economy and make sure we are very much behind it. Personally, I've driven an electric car for a couple of years, try and make all the step changes I need to reduce my carbon footprint. So being involved in a project like this that ties in some of those values that I hold, and also combine that with, the experience of being able to deliver video communication into these very different and very challenging environments at times has been a fascinating experience. And, I think the most exciting thing, Tommy, and, correct me if I'm wrong, but we're just in the start of a journey here, and there's so much to go and explore and do. And really the connectivity that lives out at sea at the minute is definitely not video conferencing or video connectivity in any way, shape or form. We're still on radios and push to talk systems. And really, if we want to make decisions faster, if we want to be able to be efficient and manage these projects correctly, then video's got to play a part. And I think that comes back to some of the stuff we're going to talk about in a minute, right? How we can enhance that video communication in the renewable energy sector. So yeah, I think that kind of summarizes where we both are, right? There's definitely a synergy, both from a personal level and also from a professional level as well.
That's great to hear.
Absolutely.
Thank you for your insight on that, guys. I'm sure we'll come back to that maybe a little more in the Q&A later on. But for now, Tommy, I'll hand back over to yourself.
Absolutely. Yeah, George brought up the connectivity, which I think is a great place to pick back up. Whether it be coastal or out in open water, the availability of bandwidth is negligible at best. So we really need to focus and hone in on not only the availability of bandwidth or connectivity, but also the cost of connectivity. So the cost of connecting these seafarers and these technicians is so much greater at sea than it would be on land. But the value of connecting these seafarers is equally important as that increasing cost. And then I think the second one that this slide actually helps us demonstrate a little bit is situational awareness. I mean, can you imagine trying to read a laminate schedule while suspended 300 meters in the air on a blade with gloves on, working with resin and cloth to try and make a repair? I mean, I don't even know how these guys currently do it. If they're trying to scroll through a paper product or hold a phone and be able to go through it, or are they just operating from memory for in the top right, for example, or the ability to know that your reality is fixed when you're in the bottom left picture and you're again up in the air, needing to step up and down ladders. One cannot be in an immersive environment with a fully enclosed virtual reality solution. So I think it's important to think about connectivity. It's also important to think about situational awareness when we're talking about any of these renewable situations, whether it be onshore or offshore, a windmill or a solar farm, for example. These are all key points to remember.
Do you think, and I think too often we talk about remote expert and you think, you've got a guy out in sea in the North Sea on the top of a wind farm, and you've got a guy back in base in London or onshore. Just looking at that picture bottom left, the ability for just these two people to be connected on a video call would actually add a whole heap of value to the way those two work as a pair. Because if the chap that's kind of in the safer position, as I'd refer to it, and the guy in the more dangerous position, if he can see what the other guy's trying to do, that idea of having a teammate with you, understanding what you're doing, that's, I think, as important as this idea of bringing somebody from Singapore in to help somebody on a wind farm in the North Sea in England, right? It's not just about distance learning, but it's also about the the web that lives out at sea, and that local area.
There are local area networks that can be developed so that the processes, like these chaps might be up there for 4 or 5 hours, and if it's blowing 25, 30 knots, they're spending all day yelling back and forth at each other over 10 meters, where with the noise canceling of the headset, the ability to create a local area network through SimplyVideo, these two technicians could be speaking the way that you and I are, and kind of playing both sides of whatever that work list is, whatever that project that they're doing. So I think, George, it's a very valid point that we need to view this not only as a connected tool, but as an edge computing tool as well, or a local area network comms device or comms solution that will, again, just improve efficiency and safety throughout the life cycle of the project. And let's chat about life cycle a bit, because I think we want to frame the actual amount of time that you and I have been looking at when we look at these renewable energy projects. So I'll talk a little bit about offshore at the moment, because that is my focus. But within offshore, there's a certain amount of discovery prior to any foundation being laid. One needs to map the ocean floor. We need to determine what the fisheries are. We need to determine how that ocean floor is evolving before planting cement down there. And that's quite a long period. And how are we currently getting those video feeds into larger conference rooms, larger enterprise video conferencing solutions? The answer is inefficiently. And I think one of the things that you and I are really focused on at the moment is, even at this early stage of discovery, being able to take the feed from a drone, take the feed from an underwater robot, and put that into a call much like the one that we're having now. Once we move to the construction phase, there's a large number of stakeholders. So you'll be multiple contractors working on different parts of that construction of the wind farm. And that's a phase at which there is no connectivity whatsoever out there. So during that construction phase specifically, the ultra low bandwidth needs of this solution are going to be really, really key. Once we get through to the maintenance and the operations phase, again, with such a long life cycle, there may be LTE out there. They may put 5G out there on every third tower. So the immediate needs of low bandwidth may not be the needs that we have in 15 or 20 years as these farms evolve and grow and change. But I think that we need to just remember that at the bookends, at the discovery, the construction, and the removal and the repurposing ultimately of these man-made structures, there is going to be limited bandwidth and a need for coordination amongst multiple stakeholders.
Yeah, it's an interesting point, just to put that perspective around the life cycle of these projects. And I was fascinated coming into these projects to understand that they do have a life cycle, and effectively part of that project is that repurposing and putting the seabed back to the way that it was found. And all of that stuff, before we engaged on some of these projects a year or so ago, I wasn't aware of that. So it's been fascinating to understand that life cycle and the management of that life cycle. I think that's a really, really important point. I think the other side is as well, these wind farms, they're critical infrastructure projects. So the security that's required, you can't just have open networks across these spaces. There's a number of security risks to look into, and again, that's a bit of a plug for SimplyVideo, obviously. But we obviously handle that very, very enterprise grade security piece with full encryption. So I think that's it's definitely an interesting point to just kind of ensure that we've got this foundation right now at the discovery phase. And if we lay those foundations correctly with connectivity, the right video services, the right hardware, we can actually make the whole 30-year project life cycle far, far more efficient throughout its whole lifetime. And you look at the ROI and some of the stats that come out of Realwear, it's quite incredible. So yeah, that was interesting. I'll jump onto the next slide, and I love this picture, Tommy. And I guess I'll leave it to you to talk us through it, because I don't know what any of these vessels really do. So yeah, this is where you your expertise.
So marine contracting covers, many parts of that project lifecycle. The company that builds the blades and then sells is 9 times out of 10 not the company that is moving the technicians from shore out to the wind farm to maintain the wind farm. They won't be the company that's training those technicians. They won't be the company that's doing the discovery. So we need to really look at this as an ecosystem of marine contractors that each will probably have a certain number of tools in their toolbox. So in the top right, for example, that looks like a SOV vessel where you can land a helicopter and put people on board, but then that same vessel is able to launch an underwater robot, for example, and tow that robot over 1,000 miles and map out where the cable's going to go, for example. And then, certain other vessels are cable layers, and then some of them are just simply crew movers or crew housing while they are out there building, laying in each tower day after day after day. They come off that boat and go onto another boat. But there's an entire just network and industry of all of these contractors that are codependent and need to have good communication between them and good efficiency between them, because the downtime or a missed opportunity on a light air day with a flat sea to be able to efficiently install the asset while the weather permits is really important in these projects. That you're amortizing the setup and the construction over the course of this 25 years. So the more efficient you are in the construction, the less you have to focus on the operational side of things in many regards. So we really want to make sure that we view this as an entire city on the water during the construction phase. We're going to have a lot of people out there, especially in the United States. We only have 5 offshore windmills at the moment in one wind farm, but we have hundreds and hundreds scheduled for up and down the east coast of the United States. And that's going to take literally fleets of these types of vessels commuting back and forth, doing step by step by step, in conjunction with decision makers and these thought leaders in Europe like Ørsted, Engie, Iberdrola, Vestas, Siemens Gamesa, GE Renewable Energies. These are all companies that are based in Europe who have been leading the charge and are responsible for supporting and educating and transferring that knowledge to U.S. citizens that are going to help build these wind farms. And I think that, we need to be ready to support these teams in the field. And I think that this is where SimplyVideo and Realwear can play an impactful role over the next 10 years of especially the U.S.'s build out of this infrastructure.
Yeah, absolutely. And just how would these boats communicate today? If I imagine that picture being, an onshore environment, it would be absurd to even think that these vessels couldn't communicate on video, right? If this was a town or a city, these buildings would be able to communicate easily. And really, what does that communication infrastructure look like today from your perspective, Tommy?
So it requires additional hardware, right? VSAT would be the way to go when you're offshore. And that's basically connecting these vessels with a satellite. So we can provide, SATCOM providers like Inmarsat, Thales, Iridium, can provide abundant bandwidth in order to do video conferencing, but it's currently cost prohibitive. So this is, again, a plug for SimplyVideo of how can we then reduce the amount of bandwidth required in order to achieve two-way video, two-way audio, and solve the problems in real time. So I think we should, kind of circling back to an earlier point, George, on board the vessel, they communicate via radio amongst themselves, or being able to pick up an intercom, which is often tethered, to the wall, but very low tech. most generally. And then when they're communicating off the vessel, the primary tool has become email because it uses much less bandwidth. So the real key here is with new products like Starlink from SpaceX coming available, how do we take a increase in bandwidth in the environment and pair that with a decreased need for bandwidth with software solutions like yours? And what we're really trying to do is find the intersection or the pain point for each client of what they can withstand in terms of their SATCOM bill versus what their needs are in terms of operational efficiency. And this is where we start to tailor our solution for each end user to ensure that we've really weighed each of these factors before we go into an actual deployment. So we will take it on a case-by-case basis because, again, one contract with one SATCOM provider could be very, very different from the next. And the tools that the enterprise is using on shore would be very different from the next. So, I think we'll get back to agnosticism a little bit here. We as a hardware company want to make sure that we're able to work with different software tools. And one of the things that I've always enjoyed about SimplyVideo is that community feeling that you're trying to connect one software tool with another software tool using SimplyVideo. And, that enhanced versatility, I think, is going to be required to address so many stakeholders within this vertical.
Yeah, so I guess what you're saying, you're going to have, if we're not careful, we may end up with two islands of communication. We're going to have all the offshore on one communication platform. You're then going to have all the decision makers and everybody else back in the offices onshore on one. We need to join that together. Otherwise, it's not actually a communication platform at all. It's just two islands, and we've created two worlds, and that's no good for anybody. So I think, again, back to that whole point of connecting worlds and connecting views and perspectives. That's what I suppose the point of this webinar is, right? We want to address these issues, and we're all very aware that it's early days in this space, but with the enhancement of technology, I think we're moving further and further into we've already deployed it on a number of occasions now, but we are starting to connect these worlds, corporate offices back to offshore environments, so we can make decisions better, quicker, faster. So yeah, I love that slide. I might even get it printed out and put up on my wall, Tommy. You'll have to send me the original.
I will indeed. A great example of subsea's Fugro, actually, which I think is the next slide. And Fugro's deployed units throughout their fleet. And these devices are helping the Fugro employees calibrate this geodata scanning equipment before it gets launched, and then inspect it when it comes back out of the water, so that you're not bringing every engineer or every scientist onto a vessel just to be able to calibrate the device before it hits the water, or the robot before it hits the water. So, I'd say Fugro is probably our best example of a subsea client. We were working with Oceaneering as well. There are a number of subsea contractors that are interested in Realwear. But I think, the real win for you and I in the past month or so has been this rock drill with Ørsted, because it validates what we've been hoping is that, the headset plus the software can be a deployable tool to solve real-time problems. And I'll let you expand a little bit on the rock drill and how that came about, or I guess what came of that project. But the initial query was, we've had these events, these drills that used to have hundreds of people converge in one place, and now due to COVID, we want to do this same event remotely. Can you, Realwear and SimplyVideo, help us? And I said, absolutely. George has got it from here.
Yeah, so it was really interesting project, and you know, working with the guys at Orsted was an absolute pleasure. And yeah, the whole idea of the rehearsal of concept is really playing out war games. It's disaster recovery. It's making sure that every eventuality is checked and played out. Obviously, I think more in that discovery phase, right? It's discovery, construction, build phase, but you know, to be able to bring all these perspectives in and also have these, you know, amazing 180-degree screens available to show not just the physical floor plans and designs, but also the feeds from different places. You know, we connected 150 people together on a call, and really, you know, just helped make decisions faster and play out use cases. And for anyone that doesn't know, the Hornsey projects, you know, record-breaking offshore wind farms that Orsted are operating. They've all been built out on the east coast of the United Kingdom in the North Sea, and they're going to be it's going to be the world's biggest offshore wind farm. So it's an amazing project to be involved with, and you know, I think the work that Orsted are doing is truly amazing. And again, back to the kind of the principles and the things that drive you. Some projects come along and, you know, there's just there's an absolute desire to get involved and help. You know, it just feels like such an amazing project. So yeah, it was really interesting to work on, and just being able to bring these perspectives in to help people make decisions. But video perspective is so much more powerful than just an audio communication line. So yeah, it was an amazing project, and I think it's a good example of how we can start to use and introduce more and more perspectives. We've already started talking about underwater drones to actually map, you know, the seafloor. So yeah, I think that was a really interesting project, and you know, one that was very successful for both of us. There's just a little bit more there about the actual HMT one, and a couple of images from subsea, right? So these are some of the images that maybe you'd want to bring into your video calls, you know, as we progress through some of these discovery phases, and also the closing up. But obviously, I guess we're talking about closing up, yeah, you know, these wind farms, Tommy. But you know, there's no wind farms closing up right now, right? They're just being built.
But if we look at Orsted's path, right, because they are thought leaders, they have made it a priority to deconstruct the oil and gas assets that they had in the North Sea. That's been a priority for this company, you know, for the last 3 years, 4 years, and those projects are happening now as we divest from oil and gas and lean into renewables. The wind farms aren't the only things that need to be pulled apart. We need to, you know, do the same thing with all these oil rigs and so on. So I don't think we're going to see this difference between oil and gas and renewables in the future. I think I would like to see oil and gas companies become renewable energy companies. You know, they're all going to be energy companies one day. Those who will survive will be the first to make that transition. And I think Orsted is the example of that, the shining example of a company that said, okay, this is where we're going, and we're going to put all our eggs in that basket. And they've come out looking golden.
Absolutely. And again,
an honor to be involved in that one.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, future vision, you know, we've touched on some of these things already, but digital twins is a big buzzword. Lots of people are talking about digital twins. But really, I think that idea of being able to bring a digital twin into, again, your decision-making process live in a video call and be able to navigate that digital twin while also having feeds from subsea environments, from offshore environments. So not only can you see the ideation process happen and the disaster recovery and the rock drill process happen in a digital twin, but then you can also start to see the seabed floor in that same call to actually see if what you're planning is viable in real time, in real life. You can actually make decisions on things that you could only dream of doing maybe 2 or 3 years ago. So I think digital twins are interesting, and yeah, we are definitely at the beta stage of being able to bring those CAD and 3D models into our video calls. So I think that's going to be a really interesting concept. Anything to add on digital twins from your side, Tommy?
I think for classification societies, the DNVGLs of the world, the Lloyd's Registry, Bureau Veritas, there are major stakeholders that are so clued in to this need that I think, you're spot on, that we all need to be focused on how we can empower these essentially like safety regulators to make sure that the assets that our communities are going to be working on are safe and are up to code and so on. And the way that they're doing that now is digital twins. So the more we focus on that, the better as we look at this roadmap. I agree.
Yeah, and that idea of 2D and 3D blended environments, I think, is really, really interesting. The other point here is just that hyperscale distributed media network. Again, we touched on it earlier, but just being able to lay the foundations and make sure that the infrastructure, the connectivity is in place before we even get out to offshore environments is really important. And again, from a SimplyVideo perspective, that's absolutely where we're now focused. How do we ensure that media traffic sits locally on a local area network so that local environment can communicate in full HD, whereas maybe the links back to shore aren't carrying so much. However, with the improvement of satellite, we're definitely moving towards being able to deliver these distributed media networks far, far more efficiently and in a much more cost-effective way as well, which is important. One thing I think just to call out as well, I think we've managed to go through almost 45 minutes of a call here without mentioning COVID, which is pretty impressive. Since we're talking about video collaboration and I want to bring it up because, I think a lot of video companies have done very well on the back of COVID. And obviously Realwear has been adopted far more with COVID. But I think it's important to say that, I don't think this technology is just a stopgap solution from a COVID pandemic. I think these ways of working are now here to stay, and people aren't necessarily always going to be in the same place at the same time anymore. And I think it's becoming expected that you can work from anywhere and you can really change behaviors in business, and video is now being pushed to its limits to see what it can do. And devices like Realwear have helped. The exponential growth of Realwear is just testament to what a good piece of hardware it is. But I think I just wanted to call out the fact we haven't spoken about COVID, which I think's a good thing, right? I'm quite happy that I haven't spoken about it until now.
I agree. I think that we're looking at this as a solution that's needed for the long term, whether or not we have short-term speed bumps that need to be dealt with. The value and the ROI is there. Whether we're in this for another year or another 2 years, in our current COVID situation, we still need to address this for the next 10, 20, 30 years ahead of us. That's the joy of working in this renewable vertical is it's, as you say, it's just the beginning, and whatever's happening this year and presently in technology is going to change. And I think that, again, kind of speaks to our versatility for both companies, is we're still in the stage where we're more than willing to listen, and we will try our best to solve whatever problems may be arising. And we have the malleability to do that. We're flexible enough at this stage in our growth. So it's the right time for us.
Absolutely. I guess it wouldn't be fair to not bring a Realwear HMT into this call, right? So I'm just going to pop mine on and join. So give me 2 minutes.
Good call, George.
Go on.
Whilst you're doing that, actually, George, it's a good reminder, seeing as we are streaming out on YouTube today, that if you are interested in staying up to date with SimplyVideo, the progress that we're making, new proof of concepts that are running, any case studies that are coming through, and videos that we post will go to YouTube. So in a very 21st century way of addressing things, don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel by clicking the button below. To go back to the demonstration, so George is just putting his HMT1 on right now. I think what would be really interesting, George, is to maybe just show how quick and easy it is to join, because that's what many of our customers ask for, a really seamless, bringing one of these into a call in great quality. Do you want to maybe talk through the steps as to what you're doing?
Yeah, definitely. So first of all, this is a real live demo, so let's hope the demo gods are with us. My children are in and they are watching Netflix, so my network hopefully holds fire. Yeah, so I've just shared in, when you get invited to a SimplyVideo call, all our calls have XR device support. So I click that, it just highlights me the QR code over there. We also have a companion application, so you can generate that QR code if you wish. But on the actual headset itself, my programs, SimplyVideo, navigate back, join new meeting, and I'm just looking for a QR code, right? So if I move my head closer, you should hear it beep, and you should hear a little knock on the door. I'll mute myself so. Okay, so that's me in the call. I'll just spotlight myself and change the view. So I've joined this on low bandwidth calling, so I'm not destroying my home network. Let me just make that a bit bigger for you guys. But there you go. You scan a QR code, you are in, and I am now hands-free. What I'll do, I'll just show you a very quick demo. I've got some cabling under my desk. So, yeah.
George, just before you do that, do you just want to minimize your screen so we can see that in full screen?
Sorry, I'm still sharing. There you go.
Got you. Yeah, we've got you.
There we go. So yeah, if I go under my desk, I'll show you some cabling, right, just to give you an idea of how this technology can be used. So totally hands-free. Flashlight on. Just grab my torch, hands-free. So if I go under here, swap view. So I've got some cabling under my desk here, and if you wanted to talk me through how to fix this, because I clearly have not a very good idea looking at the state of my wall. Zoom level 3. You can do a very detailed inspection on something, remotely, and you guys could absolutely talk me through how to fix this, because I do need help. I've got full camera control, so exposure level -1, exposure level 0, zoom level 1, flashlight off. There we go. Terminate call.
Now, George, what bandwidth are you using at the moment with that on that call when you were on the low setting, just so we have a reference?
So that was 100 kilobits per second, so very low.
Very good.
So it gives an idea that we can obviously handle these environments. Let me just flip the view back. There you go. But it just gives you an idea that these low bandwidth environments are important to us, and the way that you can join in low bandwidth mode is very, very simplistic. So it's the biggest challenge we had when we went into this market. It was like, how do we just get people onto these calls quickly, efficiently, and easily? So that kind of QR join technology we've developed has made a huge difference to a number of our customers. I think that's pretty much it, unless we've got some questions, Ben.
I believe we do, yes. So thanks for that, guys. Both of you, really great content today. We did ask the audience at the start for some questions, and we posted out on LinkedIn as well a request for people to submit questions ahead of today's webinar. So I do have quite a number to rocket through. Prepare yourselves, guys. We might be doing pretty rapid, quick-fire questions, but what I'll do is I'll read them out and I'll choose who I think is best placed to answer. So I don't know. This one's quite a good one, actually. Let's throw Tommy straight in there. Tommy, the question is, why wouldn't I just use my phone?
Well, if you're up a ladder, or you're inspecting a shaft, a propeller shaft inside an engine room, and you either slip off the ladder and fall and break your hip because you've only got one hand for yourself, or you drop that cell phone into the propeller shaft of the vessel, then incurring a €1,000,000 delay while you get all those bits of the phone picked out. I think those are two examples of why hands-free and kind of safety-oriented devices are the choice these days for the health quality and safety officers inside these large enterprises. Again, situational awareness is key. Having an extra hand for the boat some of these wind farms are in very cold, very, very cold environments. So the ability to wear your gloves so you're not getting frostbite while you're doing the inspection or doing whatever project you're doing, I think these all play into that, that value of having it hands-free.
Also, but I mean, just to take you back to the demo I just did, I mean, if I would not have been able to show you so specifically what I was doing and still have my hands able to show you. I mean, I just couldn't have done that. What I just showed you there in such an easy way. I mean, that for me to show you what I just showed you was just so simple.
Like if you were unscrewing that, right, George? If you had to be unscrewing it at the same time and then putting a different color wire in and have somebody explain it to you, it just...
I mean, I'm just picturing that right now, trying to hold the camera and do things. It's just it's a non-starter, really, isn't it?
Correct, yeah, absolutely.
Great.
Next question then. Let's go.
Next question. All right then. Let's go to the next one then. So you mentioned briefly earlier on, Tommy, about PPE. Dare I bring up COVID? But what sort of PPE is being worn currently, or has been used with Realwear?
So I think the first one to start with is just regular safety glasses, right? You can wear that with a normal hard hat. You can wear your glasses. And the heads-up display is visible through any types of glasses, sunglasses, safety glasses, reading glasses. But that same concept applies to a full face shield. It applies to, being in a hermetically sealed gown, medical gown even. We make silicone straps that go over the head so that you can use it in a hospital environment. I mean, we haven't even touched on telemedicine yet. So from that perspective, if you're on board a vessel and someone gets a compound fracture, there's not doctors on board every ship, on board every SOV. So what happens when someone gets injured on site? If you're now putting on gloves in order to triage, that's part of the protective equipment that falls under that category. So again, the versatility of the device with that, any range of PPE should be noted for any of these, these needs, COVID or otherwise.
Great stuff. This is a really good question, actually. I think it goes back maybe to something that George has just demonstrated. But Tommy, this might be something that you've experienced out in the field or at sea, I should say. If I'm using satellite data, will I still be able to place a call via my HMT?
Oh, absolutely. Yep.
There you go. Question answered. Because I guess in that circumstance, it knocks it down to that 100 kilobits per second in the worst cases, so you can stream that call through.
And again, what if you have an abundance of bandwidth, but the cost of that bandwidth is so high for the job that you're doing that it's not commensurate with the priority of that project? So being able to say, okay, well, I can go at ultra low bandwidth mode. It's again, from a business case, it makes it very compelling that you can lock and toggle your bandwidth according to the needs of the project. So again, if it's an emergency at sea, if there's an accident, if there's a fire, if there's an incident, if something needs to be fixed, the bandwidth is no longer a concern. You can open the floodgates, you can put it on best, and solve that problem in real time. It's mostly when you don't need the abundance of bandwidth that you want to be able to lock it in to save money in the long term.
Excellent. George, I think this one's probably best for you. Question here. I think my CEO would be interested in joining this call via their video meeting room in the office. Will she be able to join a call from her boardroom? So I guess that probably links to maybe those endpoints.
Yeah, so yeah, I mentioned training rooms, auditorium, boardroom systems, right? Big companies have invested a lot of money and time in adoption. So yeah, it's important that we can bring those video endpoints into these spaces. More importantly, it's more important to get the view from the HMT one back into those corporate offices, right? Into those calls, into those Microsoft Teams calls, Cisco WebEx calls. Basically, we support SIP. So we can talk to those video protocols that exist in most big enterprises without a problem.
Perfect. I guess this is a Simply Video related question here. Is there a limit on the number of people who can join a call?
Technically, no. Commercially, yes. So yeah, our standard license comes with 20 people can join a call at any one time. We tend to find that you don't really have many more than 20 contributors to a call. So we always try and define who's a contributor and who's a consumer, because really if there's consumption to be done, then maybe you're better putting that onto a stream or a webinar. Whereas if you're actually actively participating and contributing, it's very important that you define that outright, because you don't, a video call with 500 people on it's not a fun experience, if I'm being brutally honest.
I think we'll all agree with that one, George. And we'll leave this one as the last one today. It's not really a quick fire question. I'm wondering if there's maybe a sort of top level overview of this. What are the ideal processes when adopting new wearable devices?
Good question.
I'll fire off. I found it's really important to speak to the people that are at the place of work. So from a Realwear perspective, I like an introduction to the people that are currently facing the problem. And I like to understand how they use their current connectivity, what ratio from radio to email to cell phone usage there is. And I think much like a long-term renewable project, there's a certain amount of discovery. We need to take the time to learn how you currently operate, how you want to operate in the future, and create a pathway between those 2 points with the partner network that we've already established. So from my perspective, I like to speak to decision makers and then immediately get introduced to the person who has the tools on the asset. And if I can get that dialogue going, I find that everything that comes after that point has validity to the people that are doing the job, that are going to be wearing the headset at the end of the day.
I think it's about getting very, very close to the people on the ground, understanding what the people that are wearing these headsets are thinking. You know, if we address their problems, we've addressed the problem, in my opinion. And, you know, if we can just go back to that idea of, you know, connectivity and communication, the world is becoming very, fragmented in terms of the way it cooperates. And ultimately, you know, that's what this is all about. It's about trying to make communication open source, open standard, let people communicate instead of trying to put walls and barriers up. And I think as long as we understand the issues that the guys on the front line have, and we make it as easy as possible for those guys or girls to get into calls and to communicate, then we're solving the problem. And really, customer success and adoption of technology, it's all about just hand-holding the people on the front line. From my perspective, that's where I've seen success, where we are with them on the journey. And, you know, we're not just selling something, we're actually working in partnership with these companies to help create these efficiencies. I think that's a really important probably point to kind of close on, really.
I think you're absolutely right, George. Amazing content from both yourself, George, and Tommy today. Thank you ever so much for taking the time out of your day to join and to present back to us. And of course, thank you to everyone who's taken time out of their days as well to join and watch today's webinar. We'll look forward to the next one in the series. We'll be promoting that via LinkedIn. But for today, I just want to pass again our thanks to Tommy Loughborough from Realwear and George Sims from SimplyVideo. Thank you everyone for joining us. See you soon.
Cheers, guys.
Thank you, Ben.